The desert moon cast a silver sheen over the jagged cliffs, where the feline warriors, majestic, lean, and merciless, prowled their territory. Among them, Kale, once the smallest and most awkward of his clan, moved silently through the shadows. His amber eyes glimmered with memories of a life long ago, of a moment he had never forgotten. Had been years. Years since he had been that young, wide-eyed boy who dared to venture into the sacred territory of the feline warrior elder, Lyria. He had been barely tall enough to reach her knee, with hands trembling from the weight of the offering he carried. A simple carved stone, meant as a gesture of respect. "Come back when you're older," Lyria had said, her voice soft but firm, as her piercing green eyes sized him up. Her ears twitched ever so slightly, a subtle sign of amusement and disdain. Kale had stared up at her, heart sinking, feeling smaller than the stone he had so painstakingly polished for days. At the time, he had not understood the gravity of her words. To a child, older had seemed like a distant dream, something that would arrive long after dragons had walked the skies and the rivers had dried into sand. Yet now, standing under the same moonlight, the memories were crystal clear. Every lesson he had learned in the years since, every scar on his body, every mark of survival, had led him to this moment. Kale crept closer to the edge of the cliffs, his claws pressing silently into the rocky surface. He remembered the first time he had truly watched the feline warriors in action, their grace, their power, their unrelenting discipline. As a boy, he had tried to mimic their movements in secret, falling countless times, earning bruises and scratches that his mother would gently bandage. But each fall had only strengthened his resolve. Each failure had etched a determination into his very bones. Now Kale was no longer a boy. He had traveled far beyond the deserts, across jungles where sunlight turned leaves into molten gold, and mountains where the wind whipped so sharply it felt like ice against his skin. He had learned to fight, to hunt, to read the currents of the world as if it were a second language. But he had never forgotten the feline warrior who had laughed at his earnestness, who had told him to come back later. A soft hiss echoed from the shadows. Kale froze, muscles coiled like springs. Lyria had sensed him. Course she had. Feline warriors never missed a whisper of movement. Slowly, he stepped into the moonlight, letting the silver rays wash over him. Lyria's eyes widened slightly as recognition sparked. "Kale?" she asked, her voice carrying that same melodic authority that had terrified and fascinated him as a boy. Her ears twitched again, but this time it was different. Less disdain, more curiosity. "Yes," he said, his voice steady and sure. "I came back." She studied him in silence, her gaze tracing the lines of his face, the hardened frame of his body. "You've changed, grown stronger," she finally said. Her tail swished slowly behind her, a subtle rhythm that suggested both caution and intrigue. "I've learned," Kale replied. "Everything you told me to. I've trained, survived, waited." Lyria tilted her head. "Do you think you are ready, Kale?" Her voice was calm, but the underlying test was unmistakable. "Do you believe you can walk among us now?" Kale took a deep breath, letting the desert air fill his lungs. "I don't just want to walk among you. I want to stand with you. I want to be remembered as one of your warriors." For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. The wind stopped in the cliffs, the desert seemed to pause, and the moonlight cast both of them in a silver spotlight. Then Lyria spoke, her voice a soft growl. If you wish to join the feline warriors, you must remember more than your training. You must remember the code. Honor, loyalty, courage, and the ability to see beyond instinct. Can you do that? I've remembered everything, Kale said, stepping closer. Every lesson, every failure, every word you spoke to me, even the ones I didn't understand back then. Lyria crouched, her eyes narrowing. Then show me. And Kale did. The test was grueling. Lyria led him through the trials of the cliffs, testing his agility, his reflexes, and his intellect. She watched silently as he leaped over crumbling stones, navigated hidden crevices, and even captured a fleeing desert fox with nothing but his bare hands. Every move he made was calculated, precise, tempered by years of discipline. But the final challenge was not physical. Lyria confronted him at the edge of the highest cliff, where the wind howled like a living thing. Tell me what you remember, Kale, she said. Not just the lessons. Not just the survival. Tell me what you remember of who you were. And who you have become. Kale looked down at the desert floor far below, at the flickering shadows of sand and stone. He remembered the boy who had stood there with a carved stone in trembling hands, eyes wide with fear and hope. He remembered the laughter, the disappointment, the burning desire to prove himself. And he remembered every step he had taken since then to become worthy. I remember the boy who was afraid, he said softly, and the man who refused to stay afraid. I remember the lessons, the failures, and the victories. I remember you telling me to come back. And I have. I am here, not as a boy seeking approval, but as a warrior who respects the code, the clan, and you. Lyria's gaze softened. For the first time, Kale saw her smile, not the fleeting amusement of a warrior amused by a child, but the deep, rare warmth of acknowledgement. Then you have passed, she said. She rose gracefully, towering over him not as an adversary, but as a comrade. Kale, you are no longer the boy who came with a carved stone. You are a feline warrior. And you are remembered. A rush of emotion surged through Kale. Relief, pride, and a sense of belonging he had chased for years filled his chest. He dropped to one knee instinctively, a gesture of respect and allegiance. Lyria nodded approvingly, her tail brushing the ground like a seal of acceptance. You've come a long way, she said, crouching to meet his level. And now, it is time for the clan to know you as one of us. As they descended from the cliffs together, Kale's mind replayed the words she had once spoken, now layered with new meaning. Come back when you're older. She had not dismissed him. She had seen potential that only time, training, and perseverance could unlock. By the time the first light of dawn broke over the desert, the shadows of their figures stretched long and proud across the sand. Kale walked beside Lyria, no longer a boy seeking approval, no longer uncertain, but a warrior who had earned his place and remembered every step of the path. And in the quiet, silver-tinged morning, Kale finally understood. The feline warriors remembered not only strength and skill but the heart behind it. And now, he would never be forgotten after passing Lyria's final test of courage, agility, and intellect. Kale proves he is no longer the boy who was dismissed years ago. Lyria acknowledges him as a true feline warrior, saying, "You are remembered." Together, they descend from the cliffs, walking side by side at dawn, as Kale finally earns his place among the warriors and a sense of belonging he had long sought. The story closes with the realization that growth, perseverance, and honor have transformed him, and now he will never be forgotten.